So, Spreadsheet Phil can crack a decent joke, throw in a few headline-grabbing, populist policies and even cheekily pinch some of Jeremy Corbyn's oft-derided clothes. But, hardly noticed in the corner of the House of Commons, lurked an elephant, maybe more of a mammoth, that cast a shadow over the proceedings. And that giant creature's name was Brexit. In his autumn budget statement, Mr. Hammond barely mentioned the approach of the biggest challenge our economy will have ever faced in peacetime, now just 16 months away. But then, perhaps there wasn't really all that much that could be said, given negotiations with the European Union have barely moved on since this country voted to leave the EU some 17 months ago. Read more Budget 2017 key points at a glance after announcing a £3 billion fund to help prepare for our departure, adding the ominous caveat that he would allocate further sums if and when needed. Mr. Hammond blithely declared this budget was about much more than Brexit, and didn't mention the subject again. There was to be no hiding the mounting sense of unease about the UK economy. Mr. Hammond introduced the bad news by saying he would now use some long economy keywords. It read a bit like he hoped we'd stop listening at this point, and with good reason. Read more Budget 2017. This is what the budget means for Scotland. For the Office for Budget Responsibility had downgraded its forecast for economic growth from 2 to 1.5% this year, with further downward revisions for the following years and a low of 1.3% in 2019. To put that in context, these were the weakest growth estimates provided by the Treasury or OBR in 34 years. The government's independent experts are starting to get the jitters, and one reason is the uncertainty over how the UK will leave the EU, coupled with the growing prospect of a chaotic no-deal exit. Apart from a joke about Hammond in May disappointing Jeremy Clarkson on driverless cars, the Chancellor sought to draw attention away from all this with the announcement of significant funds designed to tackle the housing crisis, particularly in London. He pledged the government would ensure the construction of 300,000 new homes every year, and there was a Corbyn-like threat to use compulsory purchase orders to buy land for house building from private owners. He also announced the abolition of stamp duty for first-time buyers of homes costing up to £300,000, a measure that will also benefit those fortunate enough to be in a position to buy a £500,000 house. Like a number of other announcements, the stamp duty move will only apply in Scotland if Holyrood decides to adopt it, presumably with lower thresholds. The Scottish government should not keep people waiting for its decision. After listening to Mr. Hammond, who said Scotland would receive an extra £2 billion as a result of the budget, many might think Nicola Sturgeon is now flush with cash. However, chancellors are well known for taking a smoke-and-mirrors approach to the figures, and the First Minister quickly took to Twitter to claim the changes would still mean a real terms cut of £239 million. Perhaps we could ask the OBR could intervene. It's the kind of confusion that dominated the EU referendum campaign. But it will not be possible to use smoke and mirrors to conceal the very real effects of Brexit when it happens. The government needs to strike a deal with the EU, and soon, in order to give itself the time to draw up a sensible plan.